And anytime a child does have a head injury, even a quote unquote minor head injury,
Hmm.
they've done these SPECT scans, very detailed MRIs that looks at blood perfusion and microscopic areas of damage and neuronal loss. And I was explaining this to the mother of one of these boys who has had a soccer ball hit his head
Mm.
and cause him to be a little bit woozy and off center and
Mm.
just headaches and things like that. And I was explaining to her where these MRI studies of these children in like pee wee football and soccer and girls
Hmm.
was the big one in
Oh.
soccer. And the earlier the head, the more heading they did,
Mm.
the more microscopic brain damage that was occurring in these kids. Now, brain damage comes along with this. It's neuronal cell loss. Okay. So is it just a very microscopic little bit? Is it a lot? And so the degree of head injury can mean you have a ton of neuronal cell death and damage, and then ultimately leading to major dysfunction and disability with things like severe TBIs. And then on the lesser degree, a head injury, you hit your head, a little concussion, you just have microscopic. When you have those back to back head injuries, you can get a multiplying effect because you're already in an inflamed state. And when you're already inflamed, and then you take on another injury, that
Mm.
initiation of a greater degree multiplies the amount of potential neuronal cell loss or dysfunction. And so, the catch 22 though is those sports and movement and activity, physical exercise are really beneficial for the body. Everything
Mm.
from an inflammatory metabolic state, mitochondrial generation, wiring and firing of the brain improves with more physical activity and exercise in children. So it's kind of like you play those sports, you get a lot of benefit for your brain. You play those sports, and if you get a hit to the head, you could have some microscopic damage there. Luckily, it's like, well, probably for the vast majority, as long as they don't have a really severe head injury or those back to back type concussion head injuries, then they're less likely to actually have persistent, ongoing, neurological problems. Well, this one boy was having headaches, and even just if you've ever been, you've been to the new office and you go down the hill, and
Hmm.
it's a little bit of a rocky drive, even just that slight vibration of driving on a gravel driveway initiated a headache in this boy. That's how simple.
Wow.
He was going to school, like they were pushing to give him Tylenol and things like that because he was
Ugh.
having headaches at school and he was trying to study and focus. And so he's having these persistent neurological symptoms after these two head injuries.
Mm.
And we've been using infrared laser on him, their concussion protocols. And what's really cool, I sat in on a research review on TBI and the use of photobiomodulation is kind of scientific terms. You'll find more research on a little infrared laser, red light therapy, and head injuries. And they induce head injuries, TBIs, in animal models, and then immediately apply infrared laser therapy to the brains of these animals after initiating head injury. And they could actually substantially, if not completely, protect the brain against some of the detrimental effects
Wow.
of the TBI. And so it's like it's protective,
Mm.
and especially in those cases, if we can halt the inflammatory cascade that is occurring in the brains of these kids after even quote unquote a minor injury, to me, it's giving them a buffer zone that then
Mm.
if they have another concussion or another concussion along their career in sports, we're lessening the degree of potential permanent
Mm.
type ongoing symptoms. And permanent is what they oftentimes talk about.
Mhm.
A lot of times in medicine, it's like, oh, you have a concussion. Yep, you had it. Let's wait 3 months and see if you
Ugh.
recover or
Oh
not. And then
goodness.
if you don't, we're going to treat you with ibuprofen, Tylenol, and
Oh.
things to treat your headaches, your or glasses, or give you vision therapy to try and help your eyes work better again. Things like that. And so it's a head injury. So why don't we do what we can to preserve the brain? You know what I mean? And so,
Mm.
the brain is a horrible thing to waste. And so we are more very much more proactive. And so that's what I tell parents. Like, so we've actually had another one that came in as well, and I saw this scrape on the side of this, like almost like a rug burn on the side of his head, and I'm like, what happened there? And you could almost tell the boy was like thinking,
Mm.
but he couldn't come up with like answer my questions. His mom's like,
Oh.
hey, buddy, I know Dad and I have been saying you're not firing on all cylinders here. Things aren't connecting. Can you answer the doctor? And so I'm like, what's going on here? And so so the mom had to speak up and explain it in more detail. But he went to chest a ball, and at his age, he's not supposed to head the ball, and he took a soccer ball hit to the head. Another one, the other boy was a basketball, wasn't looking. I mean, you can visualize this just smack right in the head, and so been utilizing it. The boy that was so sensitive after back-to-back head injuries, concussions, just driving on a gravel road, inducing a headache for him. We adjusted him. We did infrared laser, and then we did hyperbaric chamber therapy, and he got out. His headache was gone that day. And then they came back, and the mom was like, well, the litmus test was going to be driving on the gravel road the next day.
Do you mean the headaches came back, or they?
No, they came
people
back.
came back.
So
Okay.
sorry about that. Thank you for the clarification there for people out there listening. And so the mom brought him back the next day, and she's like, he's not had a headache since. He's having them almost, I think, daily. And then she was also like, he went to school, things like that, no headaches. And then I was worried that we were going to drive down the road, the gravel road, and just the vibration from the car was going to cause a headache. And she's like, it didn't. She's like, I could almost cry, like,
Oh.
already seeing these improvements. And so, I just wish that was a greater level of, awareness to this, because it's like those subtle contributing factors. I mean, the more head injuries, the more concussions, the more TBIs, and each one of them having a different level of potential risk later in life. Obviously, TBI having a higher risk, but even micro traumas, they look at Breacher's brain in the military, in which it's the guys who are dropping the mortars into the tubes so they can fire them off, and that shock wave after the mortar fires, or even guns to a smaller degree, because a bullet's a less degree of shock wave, but people handling the cannons, the tanks, helicopter pilots, with major, gunships. And so we're working with a retired Apache helicopter pilot, and he had some of the big guns, I guess he was explaining to me. I forget what caliper of bullet they were shooting, but they were huge. And he's talking about, oh yeah, it just rattles your brain. And it's very common to see that military members that are in that type of job, taking on that type of duty, will have the signs and symptoms of TBIs, even though they can't necessarily say it was one big one, but they'll have similar cognitive health problems, and neurological health problems as they age. So same thing, just looking at it from a different, category of, exposure to head injuries with soccer and football and things like that. And so it's like, I don't want that boy who's right now 9 or 10 years old and who has a couple concussions to go without appropriate beneficial treatment. Again, the appropriate treatment, medically speaking, sadly, is, well, let's see how well they do on their own. Not utilize things that are scientifically shown to lessen the degree of the amount of damage and neuronal cell loss. Like, you have a head injury, a concussion, you have some degree of neuronal cell loss. And the longer you go out from that head injury, because of the cascading effect of damage to neurons, cell death, this debris field that is created by the injury to the direct blunt trauma, potentially even vascular, microvascular trauma, so then you don't get enough blood flow. Then there's this debris field that initiates immunological responses that bring on some more degree of inflammation that to a degree is needed for messaging and cleanup and repair mechanisms. Macrophages gobble up the debris, but they also help in the repair process. But that can potentially, especially when somebody is already predisposed to a hyperinflammatory, potentially autoimmune type situation. This is why, they see professional fighters and head injuries and having more risk of dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, things like that, even ALS, and autoantibodies to the brain because you have this frequent, physical trauma to the brain, but you have this cascading effect. And so why not get in there and try to improve the repair and regeneration, improve the energy production that saves neurons that are going to die in the next few hours, or if they're overused too quickly before the recovery has occurred. That's a reality. Is like, I tell parents, like, you need to monitor your kid. If driving in a car starts to cause them to have vertigo or headaches, if reading starts to cause ocular strain or headaches before when it didn't, if they start to get dizzy due to riding a bicycle and various different things, if just physical activity or even sensory input. So that could be watching TV, things that are high sensory, loud noises, things like that. They become hypersensitive afterwards sometimes. And so if those are signs, that's a sign that the energy or the metabolic capacity of those neurons in the areas of their brain that are involved or been injured don't have the metabolic energy to function correctly. And if you start to reach that capacity, that threshold, if you reach their threshold and you push beyond it, you may actually cause further neuronal cell loss because you need energy to live. Cells need energy to survive and live. And if you use it all up and there's not sufficient blood flow to restore it quickly enough, then you could ultimately lead to greater neuronal loss. And that's why they kind of say, like, hey, if you had a head and TMI in the old days, it'd be like, just lay in a dark room and we'll see what happens on your own. I'm like, actually light would be better, but specific wavelengths of light that facilitate mitochondrial energy, ATP production, so that you're giving the body more energy, which then allows the body to regulate inflammation, repair processes, stimulate blood flow, circulation, oxygenation, that then conserve those neurons that are just kind of, quote unquote, hanging on for dear life and hoping they survive this storm after the blow to the head or hit to the head. And so,
wow. All right. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're saying, who is this person that sounds so brilliant? This is Wild Doc, and he is from Wild Roots Wellness in Clarksville, just down the road, not that far. And before we go any longer, because I know some people are like, I need this guy's phone number right now. So can you give your contact information?
931-591-2010. Again, that's 931-591-2010.
Excellent. So we have him the whole hour until 9 o'clock. So I'm so glad that you guys have joined us. But we do need to talk about a couple cool things, and that is spring, as you guys see, is in full bloom. And Southside Drug wants to remind you that they are ready to serve you not only with their full-service pharmacy, but also with locally sourced unique gifts. They have many local makers and bakers now that have their goods over at Southside, so you never know what will pop up there, from delicious homemade bread to beautiful fresh flowers. I know my knockout roses are going crazy.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to come, chop some, you can go right ahead, because I didn't get to prune them yet, so I'm going to have to prune them soon. But boy, they're gorgeous. Anyway, many local makers and bakers, like I said, have their stuff over there. Stop in and soak in some hometown charm at Southside, located at 1000 South Main Street in Springfield. Store hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. For more information, you can visit SouthsideDrugCo.com. And speaking of spring, guys, you know what else is growing like crazy? The weeds and the grass, right? And I know a lot of you, your mowers maybe aren't in tip-top shape. Well, let's get them in tip-top shape. Ridgetop Mower, which Sarah learned on Wednesday, is not in Ridgetop. It is in Springfield. Not too far, just past Ace Hardware on Matthews Street, which is just off of Central. So you can see Ridgetop Mower for all your parts and service, pickup and delivery. And Gary will also pick up, you probably have some equipment there that is like, it costs more to fix it than anything, and you just want it gone. He will pick it up for free. So call Gary. Get your mower serviced today. They're located at 1100 Matthews Street in Springfield. They are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to noon. I heard we might have some severe weather blowing in today sometime after 4. So you might want to get your mowers going right now.
Right.
Get everything cut, because I think we have a few days of possible storms coming. Anyway, Gary is, here's his phone number, 615-855-0044. That's 615-855-0044. You can save 10% if you tell him Lee Marie sent you. All right. Back to Wild Doc from Wild Roots Wellness in Clarksville. I tell you, he's all of my closest friends' favorite doctor.
Appreciate that.
Well, it's true. Deborah, Laverne,
Yeah.
Mark, Shannon, John,
Nice.
all my close friends.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah.
Glad to be that for y'all.
All right. So we were talking about autism and also head injuries,
Yeah.
just in general.
Yep, you asked about the infrared laser, red light. I also utilize violet light, which helps with tissue and wound healing, things like that. So, I was playing around.
Can I
doing
see
three
that thing?
treatments. Where is it?
Yeah, when I came in.
Joke, it's like a lightsaber.
Yeah, when I came in, he had this on his forehead, and I was like, I want one of those. I don't know what it does, but I want one. Is it okay to turn it on, or will it do something?
Don't shine in your eyes. I mean,
okay,
it's
well,
not
it's
going
all
to damage if you had it.
Well, just demo it on yourself.
Yeah, so
'Cause I don't want to injure myself.
it comes with a lock key code and everything. So.
Ah.
It's a class 3B laser.
Oh, wow.
Most of your red light, infrared lights out there on the market where you can buy panels and things like that. Utilizing similar wavelengths, but the dose is a whole lot less, so you can be in front of it for a lot longer. You hold this on there for a little while, especially the violet light, because it really activates the photoreceptors on the more superficial tissues. And so you don't want to hold it on there. You can feel heat. It's not going to burn you, but that's one of the factors.
You probably want
And
Wild
so-
Doc to do this and don't try this.
So like
at
I've got
home,
it set on frontal lobe, so this can, with things like ADHD, ADD, things like that, even autism, frontal lobes aren't firing as well, but executive functioning, thought processes, communication, things like that. So if I want to facilitate blood flow circulation and mitochondrial ATP generation, light improves the cell's capacity to produce that energy so that they fire and wire together
Interesting.
better. So ultimately, ADHD was a diagnosis that I received when I was in school. I used to be, referred to by my Mrs. Katahenrich, one of my favorite teachers. And because she just, with that personality of hers, she almost like made school and education fun by playing.
Oh yeah.
And making it more like a games than it was just sit at your table and desk and read. And so she used to jokingly call me Squirrel Boy. And so
I get called Squirrel a lot too.
and I thought for sure it was because I like to climb trees, but I guess it was because
You
I
were
got
squirrely.
easily distracted.
know,
And
all
so
the
the
best of-
attention deficit issue.
all the best of us do.
Yes.
That's why you, me, and Laverne get along. We're all squirrely.
Yeah.
in
But
the best way.
right. And so, I mean, it can be a superpower, but it can also be a hindrance when it comes to certain social situations and atmospheres, or sit down, be quiet, and do your homework. But when it comes down to connecting a whole lot of dots, when it comes to health conditions such as autism and developmental delays, I'd say having that brain that just sits there and says, what are all the factors that can be brought in and what can we utilize to help these kids is kind of where my brain shines. And
So can I
love
ask
to use
something
it.
else about this
Yeah.
little contraption here?
Yep,
Because,
yep.
people are going to be wondering like me. So if you're going to be on Jeopardy and you want to
I would be, yep. I'd be like, can I get a helmet and just wear that the whole time on Jeopardy?
and I have a small, quick Jeopardy story. I don't know if you guys remember back when that guy Ken was on that won
I have no clue what you're
all right,
talking
he's this.
I don't watch this.
This was like
I know
decades
of
ago, but he had blonde hair. His name
Okay.
was Ken, and he won like a record amount of Jeopardy shows in a row. Well, my nephew, my oldest nephew, who's brilliant,
Yeah.
had to go on against Ken, which
Really?
really wasn't, as far as brain to brain, it wasn't a problem because
Yeah.
Rick knew all the answers. But because Ken had been on it for like 85 times, it was really all about the timing with knowing how to get that button to go off, you know? So anyway, yeah, what luck going, having to go after
He knew the timing of how long it took.
Yeah, because that's, who got to answer.
It's like the race car drivers, dragsters, they got to time them lights just perfectly. That was it, right?
Anyway, but I can just see now everybody sitting in the waiting room of Jeopardy with that on their forehead, like trying to activate every brain cell they could.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to ask.
Yep. And so we utilize, what I tell people the difference between a laser and an infrared light or red light therapy is going to be a light. We have lights on in here. You wouldn't be, if that was a laser with a huge number of photons coming from that over where it is right now, you wouldn't be able to sit on it. It would burn you because of the wavelength there. This is a different wavelength that is beneficial to tissues and cellular metabolic processes. It improves electron transport at the mitochondria, which ultimately lead to better energy production at the cell. And that improvement in energy production at the cellular level enables those cells to do what they need to do faster and better.
Okay.
So that's ultimately, it's like energy is needed for life and function and healing. Every process in the body, the firing and wiring, the appropriate firing and wiring of the brain. And so giving it more energy enables the body to do what it needs to do better in that moment, but also it facilitates a greater capacity to heal and recover or develop, potentially mature and rewire the way it needs to function better when it comes to neurodevelopmental conditions, depending on age.
Okay. Interesting. And maybe in the future, we can also do just an episode on different light types in general and how they affect us, because, some people are, LED and just all the different things we have in our homes. And sometimes we don't realize how
the negative ones, the ones that flicker below our capability of seeing them. So then that oversensitizes our nervous system and almost wears us down rather than supports us. When it comes down to it, natural light. I mean, sometimes I'm always like thinking in my head at my office, I'm like, do people like wonder why we don't turn lights on hardly at all in the rooms that have big windows, in my office? Because I'll be in adjustment bay and no lights are turned on. So it's got that little bit dimmer, but the sunlight through the big windows, door being open, things like that. I'm like, people think I'm like trying to save electricity and I'm a poor,
Oh my goodness.
Unsuccessful doctor because I can't turn my lights on, thinking the electric company can turn the lights off or something.
But there's so much to say.
Like, I don't want any artificial light if I can help it.
Yeah. I know that back in one of my, past lives, when I had an office job, and I never had the fluorescent lights that are above there on ever. Had the window always, the light coming in, and I had a little lamp when I, needed to, just a little, thing. And I tell you, more of the staff would come in there and sit and just chat, and they would just like it in there. And I know that that's why. You know? Well, of course, fabulous personality to talk to as well.
There you go.
But you should really try to do that where you can just let that natural light come in.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right.
So we're going to talk about autism. I'm going to give an overview of autism. When it comes down to autism, we're going to talk about the underlying multifaceted, but specifically to one of those facets is mitochondrial dysfunction that is being observed in a significant portion. Estimating research studies have estimated anywhere from 30 to 50%, and some even greater than that in terms of the number of children who are diagnosed with autism having mitochondrial dysfunction. And obviously, the more severe the autism, the more likely they are to have underlying metabolic health issues such as mitochondrial disorders. But autism and ultimately a diagnosis based around symptoms, and those observed symptoms for the diagnosis of autism are atypical behaviors and persistent deficits in social communication with repetitive patterns. So if you have those, you could potentially get put on the spectrum. Okay. Now, there's a lot of discussion here lately in social media and other places where some people are, posting and saying, well, I have autism, I don't socialize well, and I have repetitive patterns. And I jokingly say, there's a lot of autistic kids who will never be able to function on social media platforms. So for
Mhm.
people to be able to do a video and say, yeah, I have some autism features, I'm on the spectrum. But they're verbalizing this, they're talking plainly, they're making eye contact with the camera, and doing this video, or they're talking with somebody sitting across from them.
Mm.
When you look at severe autism, they
Mhm.
can't do that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so there's actually right now there is a almost like a brouhaha going on social media between parents of children with extremely severe autism. Like I spoke with one here a week ago in my clinic, and her son's been under my care for the last several years, and we've been utilizing chiropractic care, and functional medicine, functional immunology to work with this boy. Now a young man, he's a young teenager at this point in time, and we've seen incredible improvements.
Mm.
And even like one of the things the mom said early on, after about 6 months of treatment, um, that they were going to church, and she's like, I did not tell anybody that knew Clifton that we were going through any sort of treatment,
Mm.
changing anything that we were doing. And I just wanted to see for, reassurance that what she was doing and investing time and energy into was actually working. And she said that several people in her church in that 3 to 6 month mark started coming up to her and being like, Clifton is doing so well. Like, oh
Wow.
my gosh, Clifton said, like
Mm.
interacted with me, and so there was improvements in social communication. Now,
Mm.
repetitive behavior, wise, he still loves to stand in the exact same place in my office. He wants to use the exact same table.
Mhm.
If I put the table up to the first rung on the incline, he doesn't like that. He wants it on the second. He can lay down and he'll get back up and be like, nope, that's not the exact angle of
Mhm.
the table. So there's repetitive behaviors, and there's this, extreme social, uh, difference between him and everybody else,
Mhm.
But then I also have a lady in my clinic who can carry on a conversation like this. I would have never said that I'm picking up on autism like behaviors.
Mhm.
She's like, I struggle in social environment, and things like that. But this boy, like, he doesn't just struggle. It's like his brain doesn't fire and wire in that way to be able to do that. That lady can take differences in how I adjust her, and the steps I take to when she comes into the office. She doesn't have to sit in the exact same chair. She doesn't have
Mm.
to have the reclining effect of the table to be the exact same every single time. So there's an extreme difference in the that spectrum. And there's the brouhaha is coming about because there's people on social media saying, well, I was diagnosed with a low level autism and I have 3 businesses. I'm buku successful, and you're saying that autism needs to be corrected and treated. I don't believe so. Just let us. This is exactly what one of these people on social media was saying. Let us, as in the autistic community, alone. Don't try and fix us.
Oh my
And it's
goodness.
like, dude, you have 3 businesses. You're a millionaire. Good for you. You have some social awkwardness, probably, and you like to do things repetitively because you check the boxes
Mhm.
for symptoms, quote unquote, those 2 primary category of subjective, you know, symptoms or behaviors for labeling autism. But you're not Clifton. Clifton, if he does, thank you, Jesus. Have the if he someday has that opportunity. His mother works in the school system, and she's like, every teacher will say it. There's absolutely an increase in the number of children with severe autism
Mhm.
who need
Mhm.
hand holding, who
Mhm.
can't go without somebody right there with them continuously. Otherwise, they just completely wander.
Mhm.
You know, they wouldn't interact. They don't interact with other kids at all. But she's like, we work with, She's like, I know of 5. And I would say 2 are like Clifton, 3, so, you know? And so are we to say that we should, and again, when it comes to like mitochondrial dysfunction, the more severe the symptoms of autism, the more, you know, atypical behaviors, extreme repetitive behaviors, the way you shut the door, where you put the toothbrush, or if they even can do that, you know, things like that, slapping, flailing, bouncing, rocking, things like that, and complete non-social, can't even make eye contact. When they're extremely severe, the likelihood that they have mitochondrial dysfunction is way greater. Okay. And so there's literally a well-established objective biological problem going on. So to say that we should just leave all of them alone, okay, then that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? And so while a very small percentage of the increase in autism is due to increases in the number of people seeking diagnosis for, you know, support and things like that, because they have lack of appropriate social behavior, you know, things like that. But that's maybe 10-20% they're estimating. You know, the real rise in autism, there is a real rise in autism. Like you even said at the beginning, did you catch what you said when you were telling people to share the video? You said if you've got kids. Why did you say if you had kids?
Yeah, because
Why didn't you say if you had a brother, a sister, an aunt, an uncle, a grandma or grandpa with autism? Make sure you share this. So the argument that like we put them in straitjackets, we put them in, you know, homes that for the what used to be called mentally retarded, you know, there were those places, but they were few and far between. There was a few across the nation. They're now discussing the economic burden of autism has gone from millions to now 500 billion. $500 billion is what is expected to be spent in 2025 on autism. If it was just change in diagnosis, another argument, if it was just change in diagnosis, then we should have all the facilities necessary to house and should be housing those adult patients with severe autism. But they are literally discussing in the medical literature that we don't have places as parents of these severely autistic children and young adults now, as they age up and die or can't care for their kids because their kids are too old, big, violent, can't socially and can't regulate their nervous system. They're harming their parents. They're like, we don't know where to go. You know, even there's a case that was written up where the mother and the assistant caregiver were put in the hospital multiple times because of a young adult man with autism, because he was over 300 pounds. And the mother divorced. Mother basically had to bring on a caregiver to help, but he put these 2 women in the hospital multiple times. And they'd go back, and all they could do is sedate him with drugs. The emergency room had nothing else they could do. Times calling the police, nothing they could do. And there was nobody, nowhere to refer them. If it was just change in diagnosis, we would have been calling, that boy would have had a different label, a different name. It wouldn't have been called autism. And we would have had a facility to send them, because ultimately there would have been adults. Unless you're saying that, Lee, your generation, your parents' generation, their parents' generation killed these children and buried them in the backyard, or they hid them in the basement and still do today, because we don't have these elderly, older American people, adults with severe autism. We just don't.
I mean, there's
it's a reality. Like, I mean,
we can't say that there aren't any. Because, you know, we'll get
the
comments.
numbers extremely small.
Yeah.
Extremely small. Now we are seeing and estimated with the new numbers coming out from several years past research and accumulated number, because you got to wait until kids are in their around, I mean, the average age of diagnosis is around 5. I think it's getting down around 3 and 4 within the last few years. But they're now estimating 1 in 12 boys.
Wow.
So did you have 12 boys in your
Oh
school?
my gosh, 1 in 12 is what
And
you said?
Springfield's kind of a tight-knit community, right?
Mhm.
So it's like 1 in 12 boys 30 years ago when you were in high school.
Nope.
Were they just hiding those boys? 1 in every 12 boys born in Springfield should have been diagnosed with autism. At every age, if there wasn't a real increase. There is absolutely a real increase. And when we look at factors that go into the multifactorial, they call it a multifactorial condition, with a lot of different symptoms associated with it. Some of the underlying, I'm trying to read through here, multifactorial neurodevelopmental condition, multiple overlapping medical conditions that are frequently reported in those with autism are immune system abnormalities and autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune disease affecting areas of the brain and nervous system that are key in regulating behaviors that are listed on the diagnostic criteria for autism. So it's like you can literally say there's autoantibodies and inflammation and damage to the brain of individuals with autism that in those regions of the brain are needed to function properly, to be able to socialize appropriately, to not have these abnormal repetitive behaviors. So it's like you have a biological measurement, like an objective measurement that says that is not seen in most typical Americans. Now, some people have autoantibodies to areas of the brain, but they don't have enough inflammation. They don't have activity of their immune response, triggering that cell and neural loss and damage. Thus, they don't have a full-blown autoimmune disease, meaning you have to have symptoms of disease in conjunction with autoantibodies. Having autoantibodies can increase your risk if you have enough of a trigger to your immune system. And that can come from physical, chemical, or biological triggers that upregulate that immune response. So those are, in short, those are some things that we look into when working with children and individuals with autism as we look into that multifactorial approach. So it's personalized healthcare, gastrointestinal disorders, mitochondrial dysfunction, sleep disorders, epilepsy, and other neurological comorbidities. And comorbidities are things that come along with. So,
Fascinating.
Now getting into one of those multifactorial issues is the mitochondrial disorder, and that is mitochondria are the cells, every cell in your body, from muscle to blood vessel to skin to eyes to neurons. Every cell in the body has mitochondria. Mitochondria produce the ATP, which is your energy. It's your fuel for your cells to do everything that cell needs. Okay, to produce hormones, to produce neurotransmitters, to fire, and then wire together, as we call it, when it comes down to neurodevelopmental conditions. You need energy to do so. Okay, and so when you lack the capability, or you have that mitochondrial dysfunction, you lack the capability to sufficiently produce or efficiently produce energy at the cellular level for those neurons in autism to fire and wire correctly. And so when you don't have enough energy for all the systems and areas of the brain to fire simultaneously or in a precise, direct method or direct route. So you can have areas of your brainstem and cerebellum that receive information from everything around you, sensory stimuli, fire into the cerebellum, and that takes that information in and fires up to the higher hemispheres, especially frontal lobes, to allow you to react appropriately and respond appropriately. Well, with autism, it doesn't fire correctly, or it doesn't fire at all, or the other catch-22 with neurological conditions is that you spend more energy inhibiting neurons in areas of the brain than you do actually firing them. So if you can't inhibit them, they fire too easy. This is what I explain to parents when they're like, they literally eat a few things. They can't tolerate sound. Like literally the boy that I sat down with the mother yesterday, immediately upon me speaking, and because one of the fans were on, because we liked our windows open yesterday because it was a little bit nicer weather, we turned the fan off. We had to, he immediately cupping his ears because sound, couldn't tolerate it. You see how many kids in church nowadays you see with headphones on and in their own world. You know what I mean? So there's a reality. We're seeing more of that.
Wow, very interesting.
What they can't do is right now, if I stop and listen, we got a fan going over there. We got something going on over there. Another radio station in the other room, I think. So when I looked for it, I could hear it. But have you been like sitting here being like, oh my gosh, I can hear them. I can hear this fan. Autism, they can't do what we've been doing this whole time. Our brain has been automatically tuning all of that out. All right. So our neurons have to be further away from threshold to be capable of tuning that out and not firing up to our hemisphere and being cognitively aware that all of that's going on around us. Autism can't silence that stuff.
Wow,
because their nervous system doesn't have enough energy to be able to inhibit this high intensity firing of their neurons that bring awareness. So there's more energy in inhibiting than there is actually in firing. Gotcha. So that's
fascinating.
And so when you give more energy, you can start to regulate better. And regulate means choose what you hear, what you taste, what sensations are allowed to stimulate the brain, the cognitive aware areas of the brain, and so that you can actually function without being overwhelmed.
Wow, such good information. And I do, before we get too late here, I do want to mention a couple calendar items to add because this is the first weekend of the month, which means also the local GOP meets at 8:30 a.m. for breakfast over at Purpose Life Church, 805 Memorial Boulevard. And that's followed by a program that's going to be at 9 o'clock. May is Military Appreciation Month. And I don't know if you knew that, but there's like 5 or 6 actual days that are designated for our military within May. It's not just Memorial Day. So they're going to have Operation Song. Executive director is going to be coming to speak about their program, which they let veterans and families tell their story through songs. And so it's going to be a fascinating speaker. So that's this coming Saturday, 8:30 a.m. potluck breakfast, 9 o'clock program. And then after that, of course, we also do our prayer in the square. And that is something that we have been doing every single first Saturday since Pray for TN started, which was back in July. And so we meet at 11:30 a.m. over by Crossroads Christian Bookstore, 600 South Main Street, right across from the beautiful courthouse that I saw a lot of you at yesterday. Thank you all for coming to National Day of Prayer on the courthouse steps. What a blessing that was. Thank you to everybody who helped out. I want to do a big shout out to UPS who for free did all of the printing for our little programs, for our podium logo. Thank you so much, UPS. They're always helping out the community. And so I might as well tell you a little bit more about UPS because they are your one-stop shop for all your printing needs. They can do packing and shipping, business cards, blueprints, document shredding. Hey guys, graduation time is now. So if you did not get graduation announcements yet, go in and see them. They can even design them. They have somebody in-house to do that kind of thing. They're located at 513 Memorial Boulevard in Springfield, or you can call them at 615-384-0093, 615-384-0093. And you might have seen Deborah yesterday on National Day of Prayer. She was helping to lead the worship time there. So make sure you go in and tell them that Lee Marie sent you. All right. I also want to do a shout out to South Haven. They did a wonderful job at the National Day of Prayer yesterday. They brought their high school vocal ensemble. And then, and also, of course, Jason helped us out with worship leading. And then we had a lot of homeschoolers. We had almost 15 homeschoolers come out and read a Bible verse. They ranged in age from high school all the way down to, I think our youngest one was 7. and they were just absolutely precious. And they were a part of history, and the word does not go out void. So I'm just so excited that they got to all share a Bible verse with our community. That was so cool. One other thing to put on your calendar for this Sunday: Lights Chapel Baptist Church is celebrating their 49 years as a church. So they're going to do something special this Sunday, 10 a.m. They're going to have special music provided by Eddie Sanders and friends. And then following the morning worship time, they will gather for a covered dish meal. So you can be a part of that. Lights Chapel Baptist Church is in Greenbrier on Lights Chapel Road. Very easy to find. And so hopefully we will see you there. One other group I want to talk to you about is DK Styles, because speaking of our Military Appreciation Month, DK Styles is a great supporter of our military, and they offer all of our military folks and first responders haircuts for only $20. And their hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 7, Saturdays, 8 to 3. DK Styles is located at 3538 Tom Austin Highway in Springfield, or you can call them at 615-384-8999. 615-384-8999, and make your appointment, because lots of stuff is coming up, graduations and all that, so you want to get in there and look your best. DK Styles can help you do that, and tell them that you appreciate them supporting our military. If you haven't made some really cool deals for our military for May, please think of doing that if you're a business, because like I said, May is Military Appreciation Month. And so even if you're already doing something, let's do something even extra special for them. All right. I do want to talk about one more sponsor, because it's already like 7 minutes till, I don't know how this happens, Wild Doc. We really need to do 2-hour shows, but I guess I could just go online and watch some of your other stuff.
You're going to have to arm wrestle my wife for that one. You want to take me away for 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. So Coldstream Christian Camp. Their website is coldstreamchristiancamp.org. And guess what? The youth camp registrations are open right now, guys. Those are fast approaching. Some of these are getting ready to sell out. I think one of them already has, but they have day camps. They have elementary camps. They have middle school camps. So make sure you go on. Oh my gosh, yes, they do have a high school camp, July 14th to 18th. Very cool. They've got a ton of camps, and they are just doing a great job in our community. So I hope you'll go out. I know a lot of you got to see them on the Experience Robertson County tour last year, because they were the contact for Adams. Guys, they're not that far away. Like from this radio station, Coldstream is maybe like 17 minutes away. So they've been partnering with families and churches here since 1980. And they've got a lot of different things. They got small cabins, they got big cabins, they got little houses if you just want to do like a ladies retreat or something. They've got a lot of different options for you. So go by and get a free tour, and tell them Lee Marie sent you. All right, Wild Doc, we got like 5 minutes to wrap up. Oh, one more thing, guys. See my shirt? Kilgore Bluegrass Festival, guys. Make sure you are getting this on your calendar, because this is my favorite event to go to in the whole county. Friday, May 16th, 5 p.m. it starts, and then Saturday, May 17th, it starts at 11. And $10 for the whole festival. Kids 12 and under are free. You should bring your whole clan, Doc.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Brochures.
It's at Kilgore Park, 150 Kilgore Trace. I'm even going to let you have my personal invitation there to take home to your family and see, because, kids can get inspired by this music. Friday night is a kids kids contest for all different types of instruments, and they are good, let me tell you. So, your kids could get inspired to pick up a banjo or a fiddle, or, to start clogging. Clogging's good for us, right?
There you go.
All right.
Dance and movement.
All right, so we got 4 minutes for the Wild Doc wrap up. What you got?
So, always a lot more I'd love to share, but and then if there's somebody out there looking, to help somebody who's dealing with autism, help a child, help an individual, there are testing that can look into some of those underlying factors when it comes down to specific things like mitochondrial dysfunction. While there are genetic testing to rule in or out if that's going on, really whether those genetics, those genes are truly affecting the individual, it comes down to blood and urine panels that look at various different amino acids in the body's ability to utilize, or the buildup of those amino acids, or the excretion of certain biomarkers in the urine can actually tell us whether the energy producers, the mitochondria of the cells, are actually functioning correctly, because those things should not be building up in the urine or building up in the blood. And thus, if that is occurring, it is nearly a guarantee that we are dealing with some level of mitochondrial lack of appropriate function or dysfunction. So we do those types of testing in our clinic because we're looking for the underlying factors that are going to be contributing to the overall degree of burden. Again, I say it specifically like that because in and of itself, mitochondria are not necessarily the cause of everyone out there having autism that is diagnosed with autism. But the more severe, the more likely that situation is going on within their cells and in their body. And so if we can clearly and definitively say, yes, there is a lack of appropriate mitochondrial function here, and we start facilitating and supporting the mitochondria, facilitating mitochondrial biogenesis through exercise and other therapies. So provide the right raw materials, provide the right stimulus that affect the mitochondria, utilize things that improve the mitochondrial function that you already have, so we stave off further neuronal cell loss or dysfunction. You're creating an environment where then, because the body has innate ability to begin to heal on its own when it is supported in the correct ways, these children can make leaps and bounds of improvement. I mean, I've seen children go from completely nonverbal to completely verbal.
Wow.
And so, and parents being like, and some of them over the years going from on the spectrum to no longer reaching diagnostic criteria to be labeled as autistic because we've supported their body in such a way that enabled their brain to function better.
Wow.
So there is absolutely hope.
Yeah. That is great. I know a lot of people are out there just, wow, there's now hope. Okay, so we gave your phone. Let's give your phone number again and your address.
So the office is located at 755 North Woodson Road in Clarksville, Tennessee, off exit 11. And then the phone number to the office is 931-591-2010. Again, that's 931-591-2010.
Okay. And it's only, about 35 minutes from here?
Bad. Yep. Exactly.
Like okay.
Pretty much.
All right. So you can definitely get in there. Full service type of doc, I tell you. That's awesome.
Try.
All right. We got one more minute. Any particular foods you want to tell people to be avoiding if they're, because I know foods also have a big, I know that's a whole show, but.
Luckily we had a little bit of government intervention and, it sounds like food manufacturers are going to be finally saying that they're, agreeing to take out food dyes and things like that. And you look at you go into those toxins and be like, well, let's talk about all the toxins in food that we've been feeding our kids over the years that have been connected to toxicity of mitochondria and contributing to mitochondria reactive oxygen species that lead to inflammation or overstimulation or areas of the brain that then are connected to ADHD and autism. That's why the elimination of food dyes time and time again from diet has been shown to have some level of improvement in almost all of the neurodevelopmental conditions that are out there that have been labeled so far. It just helps your brain fire better when you eliminate those. So luckily, RFK Jr. has facilitated that change that we can at least stop feeding our kids junk like that.
Well, so much great information, Wild Doc. Thank you so much. And then again, listeners, please be sharing this show. Also, you can send in your questions anytime because Wild Doc is just, he's brilliant on a lot of topics. So we're really thankful. We're very blessed here at WSGI to have you. So thanks again for coming in.
Glad to be here.
And how many kids you got?
We got 5.
Woo!
Yeah.
And all this with 5 kids, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, give your family our best.
I will.
We love y'all. All right, guys, you've been listening to 1100 WSGI. This has been Lee Marie on The Go Show. I'm so glad that you guys joined us. And, if the weather cooperates, there could be a First Friday market downtown today in the Springfield Square. But I heard that there were thunderstorms coming in, so I don't know. So just stay tuned for more information on that. But God bless you all. Make it a great day. We love you. And again, this has been 1100 WSGI.